Jacob Bernays, and the Catharsis of Modernity. 1. James I. Porter. In 1857, Jacob Bernays, the German philologist from the Jewish Theological Seminar in Breslau, published an article from 70 pages long that would create an upheaval. An article some 70 pages long that would create an upheaval in the academic world of tragedy. The essay, Outlines of Aristotle's Lost Work on the Effects of Tragedy, is one that every study in the same area must reckon with today. Taking on the established view of catharsis, which hung on a single obscure sentence from Aristotle's Poetics, he argued that catharsis was not to be understood as a purification of tragic emotions, as the cliché on everyone's lips would have it. This misreading of Aristotle had turned tragedy into a moral house of correction and a branch and rival institute of the Church. Bernays' response to the reigning view was threefold. He demonstrated the absurdities of the existing translation of Aristotle's remark, which meant embarrassing the likes of Lessing and Goethe. He underscored the medical meaning of the term catharsis elsewhere in Aristotle's corpus, and he insisted on a pathological interpretation of catharsis. The results were both shocking and sobering. Catharsis had to be understood as a process that involved a violent discharge and not, as his predecessors held, a purification of the affections and emotions. What Aristotle had in mind, Bernays claimed or appeared to claim, was a process that was closer to an orgiastic reaction, to vomiting, or to evacuation. If Bernays was right, then in contrast to popular and academic belief, catharsis could serve no higher purpose, be it moral or pedagogical, and not even any obvious aesthetic purpose. It must be a physiological event, pure and simple. Bernays' demolition of a cherished commonplace was comparable to Friedrich August Ruth's rude dismantling of the genius of Homer in 1795. Like Wolff, Bernays had both Greek and philology on his side, and in his rebuttal he brought to bear the entire Olympian machinery of the German seminar and every scrap of available evidence from antiquity. What could not be proved directly in Aristotle could be inferred from hints and later sources attesting to a lost treatment by Aristotle of a full-blown theory of catharsis, which is meagerly referenced in our Poetics, and which in turn is but a pitiful excerption of this longer lost work. A loss that was all the more regrettable as the thrust of that entire work was devoted to the effects of tragedy on the spectator and her emotional states, that is, their catharsis, and not to its aesthetic construction or form, As the treatise in its preserved form misleadingly suggests, modern science, materialism, and rationality triumphed over bourgeois sentimentality, or so it seemed. This is how Bernays was and is remembered, and not only because of his later reception by Nietzsche and Freud. He was attacked at the time for his crass reduction of art to a form of pathology. Above all, in the first half of his article, despite the contrary indications of the later parts of the same document, it was here, in the first 2 sections, out of 4, the most narrowly philological of the treatises, but also the easiest to grasp, that the primary thrust of his argument was felt to lie, a thrust that scholars for the most part ignored or else, more rarely, noted and then condemned as either excessive, misconceived, or contradictory. This same first portion is all that the editor of the only existing translation in any language saw fit to see into English for readers today. And more recent scholarship for the most part follows suit, typically giving Bernays a nod before dismissing him out of hand, and opting instead for a view that blends purgation with purification in the name of emotional and ethical balance, alignment, and amelioration. But Bernays did not stop here. On the contrary, he went on to develop a theory of catharsis as an experience of the sublime in the face of nature and the universe, seemingly rejecting his own proposed medical model, but in fact building on the logic of his analysis from the first part of his treatise. As Bernays develops his idea, he moves well beyond the rather limited if provocative theory about the physiological discharge of burdensome affections that he is usually understood to have held, and even beyond tragedy. In the final analysis, his hypothesis amounts to a general theory of affective experience in the Greek world, of which tragic catharsis is only a small subset, and to which medicine is irrelevant as an explanatory model. Catharsis describes any vital encounter in the mind, soul, or body with the outer world of experience, an encounter that Bernays takes to have been ecstatic for reasons that will emerge. And as his theory unfolds, it explodes the very premises on which it has been misread for so long. This, at least, is what I hope to demonstrate in what follows.